Welcome back. If you've been watching the slow-motion car crash that is Keir Starmer's Labour government, you know the wheels aren't just coming off, the engine is on fire and the driver's asleep at the wheel. We are watching an interview here with Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary on GB News, and it is a masterclass in the kind of slippery, technocratic evasion that has come to define this administration. Remember when they told us the adults were back in the room? Well, if these are the adults, we're in for a very dark few years. We're going to dissect exactly what she's saying here, because beneath the calm voice and the "we're listening" rhetoric, there is a very dangerous agenda unfolding regarding our sovereignty, our legal rights and our democracy. Let's get into it.
Lovely to see you this morning, Culture Secretary. Thank you for your time. In light of his Truth Social post on Greenland, Lisa Nandy, has Donald Trump lost his mind? His former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, seems to think so, writing in the Sunday Telegraph, this is the craziest thing he's done yet, and that's saying something.
Well, I don't think he's lost his mind, but I do think that the American administration and President Trump are right to be very concerned about security in the Arctic region, and that is what lies behind his concern about the situation in Greenland. For our part as a government, we've been absolutely crystal clear that the future of Greenland is a matter for people in Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark to determine, and not anybody else. And it is not in our collective interest for NATO allies to be divided on this issue or on the question of tariffs. We think the tariffs are unhelpful and they're wrong, and we need to be working together in order to secure the Arctic region to make sure that we're safe in the United Kingdom and the people of America are safe as well.
Hasn't the Prime Minister and indeed the Labour government slightly undermined their own argument when it comes to the self-determination of Greenlanders and indeed the Danes because you gave away the Chagos Islands? I mean, you didn't make that argument for Chagosians, so why should anyone believe it when the Prime Minister claims he wants to protect Greenlanders?
Well, what we did in the Chagos Islands was actually, in fairness, a continuation of what the previous Conservative government had been trying to do but not been able to manage with the Americans, which was to make sure that we cut a deal that enabled us to secure the future of the Chagos Islands as a strategic base and to ensure that our security is protected. That, in the end, is what lies behind all of the decisions that we make as a government, is what is in the interests of the British people. We don't think it's for a moment in the interests of the British people to allow a principle to be established where the future of a sovereign country is determined by the American administration or anybody else. We do think it's in our collective interest to work together to do as the Foreign Secretary was doing just this week over in Norway, increasing our presence there, making sure that we're doubling the number of Marines in the region, and working with the Americans, with the Canadians and with our European counterparts to make sure that we deal with the threat of Russian aggression there.
OK, let's bring things back to domestic matters. Is another U-turn in the offing on jury trials and scrapping them? You've got one of your own MPs, Carl Turner, threatening to rebel. He says in turn there are two ministers in the cabinet who want to abstain on this vote. They don't believe in it. In fact, Turner himself has called for David Lammy's resignation as Justice Secretary over this. He's got a point, hasn't he? It wasn't in the manifesto.
Let's just pause right there and really digest what we've heard in these first few minutes, because it is absolutely chilling if you care about the future of this nation. First, look at how casually she brushes off the surrender of the Chagos Islands. Camilla Tominey rightly nails her on this. Nandy tries to spin this as a continuation of Conservative policy, which, let's be honest, the previous Tory government was useless, but Labour has taken that uselessness and turbocharged it into active national self-sabotage. She talks about securing a strategic base, but let's be real, handing over sovereign British territory in the Indian Ocean, especially when China's circling like a shark, is an act of weakness. It sends a signal to the world, to Argentina regarding the Falklands, to Spain regarding Gibraltar, that Britain is open for liquidation. It's a going out of business sale and everything must go. She claims it's about the interests of the British people. But how does losing strategic depth in a volatile world help a bloke in Barnsley or a family in Kent? It doesn't. It helps the globalist conscience of the metropolitan elite who are ashamed of our history and desperate to deconstruct our borders.
But then she pivots to something even more insidious, the potential scrapping of jury trials. This is where the mask really slips. Listen to the language she uses. Speed that up. Efficiency. Justice delayed is justice denied. These are the buzzwords tyrants always use to strip away your liberties. The right to be judged by your peers, by a jury of 12 ordinary men and women, is a cornerstone of English liberty. It dates back to the Magna Carta. It is the final barrier between the individual and the crushing weight of the state. Nandy frames this as helping rape victims, using emotional blackmail to dismantle a legal pillar that has stood for centuries. They always use the most emotive cases to grab power. But once you establish the principle that the state can bypass a jury because the system is broken, you don't fix the system, you just empower the state. Why is the system broken? Because they've underfunded it, filled it with bureaucracy and allowed crime to spiral out of control. Instead of fixing the backlog by building courts or hiring judges, they want to remove your rights. They view the jury, they view you as an inefficiency, a hurdle to be cleared so they can process people like cattle. It's managerial authoritarianism, plain and simple. She says no one else has put forward proposals, which is a lie. The proposal is fund the courts properly and stop trying to Americanise our justice system into a plea bargain assembly line. This is a government that despises tradition and views our ancient liberties as inconvenient roadblocks to their social engineering projects.
All I would say to Carl and to others, and I've known Carl a long time and like him enormously, is that nobody else has put forward proposals about how you reform what is a broken justice system. You've got women who are awaiting the trial of perpetrators on rape charges, who are waiting for years and years, and essentially what that is doing is timing out the system so that the perpetrator knows they only have to wait it out. And victims will just give up because it's too hard and takes too long to get justice. That's the situation that people like Robert Jenrick left us with. And what we're trying to do is speed that up, never at the expense of proper justice, never at the expense of making sure we get the right outcome. But at the moment, justice delayed is justice denied for too many people. And we're not prepared to allow that to stand. If Carl Turner or others want to talk about alternatives to fixing our broken criminal justice system, we will listen. We're prepared to hear them, but so far not a single person across the political system has been prepared to grip this, and we are.
All right, that looks as if you're opening the window slightly to a change of heart on it if evidence is presented that you could deal with this issue alternatively. Do you appreciate, I mean, your colleague, the Transport Secretary, doesn't seem to appreciate this, but maybe you do, that this government has been characterised by U-turn after U-turn after U-turn? I mean, Wes Streeting, who apparently is planning, not plotting, a leadership bid in the future against Keir Starmer, has said the policy should be get it right first time. You haven't got anything right first time.
Well, I don't accept that at all. I mean, if you look at the work that we're doing, not just in Wes's area on bringing down waiting lists, but on planning reform to get the houses built this country needs, in terms of setting up Great British Energy and bringing down people's energy bills. If you look at the work that we're rolling out around the country right now, we've been able to make sure that by making tough decisions, we're able to ensure that young people in every part of the country are going to be able to have access to youth clubs and youth workers, arts, culture, music, sport, dance, drama, all the things that working class kids used to have access to, but over the recent decades they can only now access if their parents can pay. Because we're working together, because we're getting it right, we're being able to make sure that those things happen and that people's lives get better. Do I think this has fixed the problem? No, I don't. Is there a lot more to do? Yes, there is. But I don't accept the idea that we can't get it right first time. Most of the time we are getting it right first time, and where we're not, it's because we're listening to people hitting the alarm bell, saying there are valid concerns about the way in which we're going about achieving our objectives. We listen and we change course. I think that's just being responsible and listening to the British people.
There have been 13 U-turns since Labour took power, but just on that line you just said about we're working together, is that credible then when yet again in the Sunday newspapers we've got reports of Wes Streeting briefing against Keir Starmer? Apparently there was this piece of the news statement saying that he was approached by Morgan McSweeney, asked if he was plotting. No, I'm not plotting, I'm planning, as any ambitious minister would. Then we've got talk of Andy Burnham wanting to come up with a dream ticket of him as Prime Minister, Ed Miliband as Chancellor. I mean, dream ticket, that might be some people's idea of a nightmare. So you're not a nest of singing birds, are you? You're a little nest of vipers, all vying. People are all vying to be Prime Minister because Keir Starmer's not doing very well and he's the least popular Prime Minister now in history.
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, you wouldn't expect me to agree with that, but I won't lie to you. It is deeply, deeply frustrating. I opened the papers on, well, you don't open the papers anymore, do you? But I clicked on the app on Saturday with a feeling of just a sinking feeling, because the noise around all of this is really, really frustrating, and I don't want to dress it up for you. It frustrates the hell out of me. You've got people at the moment who have had 15 years of life just getting harder and harder, worrying whether the opportunities that they had will be on offer for their kids, and quite often over recent decades feeling that the answer is no, and we've got one shot to turn that around. I do think, though, to be really clear, I think that the Cabinet is working together really well. I think we're very close. We've known each other for quite some time, and there is nothing like being in opposition for 14 years and having a ringside seat to what is being done to your community to bring you together. So I'd say we're more of the singing birds.
Who are you frustrated by, though? Wes Streeting?
No, I'm frustrated by the noise. I'm frustrated by the people who go and talk about these things and brief against each other, or, you know, leak. I would say leak, but actually most of what I read in the papers bears no relation to the sort of conversations that we have behind closed doors, not just what we say, but the tone of what we say. I'm frustrated by those people, and I just wish they'd stop it.
All right, let's move on because I know time is tight. You talk about people having a front row seat for 15 years of Tory disaster, and yet you're denying 4 million of those people a vote in the local elections in May. Why are you doing that? If you look at the electoral maths, it's because, isn't it, Lisa Nandy, Labour faces losing the seats that it's postponed the elections in to reform. So you've done this because you're running scared.
No, what we're doing is reorganising local government, and the reason that we're doing it is because a lot of people in the country right now have a really confusing two-tier system of councils, and we think that that's bad for the country. It means that it's not clear who's responsible for what. I mean, many people just wouldn't know who to go to when there was a problem. It means there's often a disagreement about how to sort out problems when they arise, and it's also very expensive. We think we can do better than that as a country. We think we can make it streamlined and much clearer, so that you have one council that you go to who's responsible for sorting out your local problems, and a government who sorts out your national problems. We don't think it makes sense to have loads of elections to positions that won't exist in just a few months or a few years' time.
4 million
and so
people
we've asked councils
are going to be
us.
denied their democratic right to exercise a vote on this Labour government. Why shouldn't they exercise a vote on this Labour government almost 2 years into your administration? Just on a democratic point. I take it what you're saying about logistics, but you're denying people their democratic rights. And that's an aberration, isn't it, Lisa Nandy?
So, look, I absolutely believe in people's democratic right to express their view, and, you know, having been an MP for 14 years, lost most of those elections that we stood in, and, you know, campaigned on the Remain side for Brexit, and lost that as well. You'll know, Camilla, that I am a staunch defender of people's right to vote for things, even when I disagree with them, and if they do, I will go out and defend their right to do so, and defend their right for that to be upheld. But we've been working, that's precisely why we've been working with local councils, and it's not just Labour councils who've said we think this is a nonsense that will cost us too much money and waste time when we could just get on with reorganising and then holding elections. It's Tory and other councils as well. So we're asking councils to work with us. We're not imposing this from the centre, but we think it serves people better.
There's so much deception packed into that last segment, it's hard to know where to start. First, let's look at this election cancellation. Nandy is sitting there with a straight face telling you that cancelling local elections for 4 million people is actually doing them a favour. She calls it reorganising local government to stop confusion. Do you believe that? Do you think for 1 second that if Labour were 20 points ahead in the polls and crushing it in these areas, they would be cancelling these votes? Absolutely not. This is raw political cowardice. They're terrified. They've seen the data. They know that in the post-industrial towns, in the places they took for granted for decades, the reform vote is surging. They know that people are sick of the U-turns, the winter fuel cuts and the two-tier policing. So, rather than face the electorate and take their beating like Democrats, they simply delete the election. They're gerrymandering the timeline. It's the ultimate managed democracy tactic. She says it's expensive to hold elections. Since when is democracy judged by a price tag? You know what else is expensive? Net zero, foreign aid, housing illegal migrants in hotels. They have billions for that, but the cost of a ballot box is suddenly too high. It's an insult to your intelligence.
And now, shifting to the West Midlands police issue she's about to address, this is the smoking gun of the two-tier system. We had a chief constable who effectively banned Jewish fans from attending a football match because the police couldn't or wouldn't guarantee their safety against a mob. Let that sink in. In 21st century Britain, law-abiding people were told you cannot come here because the police were too afraid to confront the people who hate them. And what happens to the man responsible for that surrender? Does he get sacked? Is he stripped of his rank? No, he retires. He walks away with a gold-plated pension, fully intact, paid for by the taxpayer. Nandy calls it troubling and horrendous, but watch her hands. She washes 'em of it. I'm not across the details of his pension. That is the sound of the establishment closing ranks. In the private sector, if you fail this spectacularly, you are out. In the public sector, you get promoted or you retire to a golf course in Spain. This lack of accountability is why this country is broken. They're happy to throw the book at a grandmother for a Facebook post, but a chief constable who capitulates to sectarian intimidation gets a golden handshake. It proves that the hierarchy of British policing is no longer about enforcing the law without fear or favour, it's about managing community tensions and taking the path of least resistance, even if that means sacrificing the rights of law-abiding citizens.
Can I ask you about the West Midlands former Chief Constable Craig Guilford, who's now been allowed to retire on a full pension? Is that right? Is that right that he should be allowed to retire with no disciplinary action taken against him at all for what was a completely and utterly bungled ban on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans at that Aston Villa match?
Well, I'll make no comment about his pension because I'm not across the details of precisely what his pension arrangements are, and I do think in general our police work extremely hard and deserve to retire properly. But on the question of accountability, no, I think this is really, really horrendous actually. What you've had over the last few months is a situation unfolding where we now know that West Midlands Police made the decision to recommend that we ban away fans from a football match on the basis that they wouldn't be safe because of who they were, because they were Israeli, but in the most part actually the fans attending that match weren't going to be Israeli, they were going to be Jewish, and many of them travelling from other parts of the UK, particularly London, to attend the game. Now I first saw this just after Aston Villa announced that was the decision, we took a view as a government that was completely and utterly unacceptable. And I have watched with real dismay as the West Midlands Police have sought to justify that decision based on what we now know, thanks to the independent review, is information that was completely inaccurate. That is just not acceptable. It's had a chilling effect not just on the Jewish community, but on anybody in this country who believes in the highest standards of policing. I think it's absolutely right that the Chief Constable has gone, but I think there are still serious questions to answer, and I think I'm probably as troubled as most of your viewers watching this programme about the lack of accountability.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning, Lisa Nandy.
There you have it. In just over 10 minutes, we've seen the blueprint of this government. They will surrender our territory abroad to look like good global citizens. They will dismantle your right to a fair trial at home to cover up their own administrative incompetence. They will cancel elections when they are scared of losing, and they will shrug their shoulders when the police hierarchy rewards failure and cowardice with a fat pension. Lisa Nandy sounds reasonable, she sounds calm, but the ideology driving this is anything but. It is a systematic dismantling of the things that make this country function: accountability, democracy and the rule of law. They treat the public not as citizens to be served, but as a problem to be managed. So here is my question for you. If they are willing to scrap jury trials and cancel elections less than 2 years into their term, what rights do you think you'll have left by the time we actually get to vote them out? Let me know in the comments.